The dust devils danced across the empty street like ghosts celebrating their victory over the living. And Delilah Walsh sat on the steps of the abandoned saloon with a loaded pistol in her lap, watching the sun crawl toward the horizon, and wondering if she had the courage to pull the trigger before nightfall came again. She had been in Pinos Altos for 3 days now, maybe 4. Time moved differently when you were waiting to die. The ghost town sprawled around her like the skeleton of something that had once been alive, its buildings bleached white by the relentless New Mexico sun, their windows dark and empty as the eye sockets of skulls. The silver mine that had birthed this place had played out years ago, and the people had followed the ore elsewhere, leaving behind nothing but memories and the dry wind that whispered through the gaps in the weathered boards. Delilah was 22 years old, though she felt ancient. Her dark hair hung limp around her shoulders, tangled and dusty. Her dress, once a respectable blue cotton, was torn at the hem and stained with the red dirt of her journey. She had walked for 2 weeks after fleeing Santa Fe, her feet blistered and bleeding, her canteen empty for the last 3 days. She had found Pinos Altos by accident, stumbling into it like a drowning woman finding a rock to cling to, only to discover the rock was already underwater. The fever had started yesterday. She could feel it burning through her body, turning her thoughts sluggish and confused. Thirst had become a constant companion, a gnawing presence that consumed everything else. She had searched every building in town for water, finding only dust and rat droppings and the brittle remains of forgotten lives. There was a well in the center of town, but when she had lowered the bucket, it had come up dry, scraping against stone with a sound like bones breaking. She picked up the pistol, feeling its weight in her hand. It was a Colt revolver, taken from the man she had killed in Santa Fe. She had not meant to kill him. She had only meant to stop him from doing what he was doing, from tearing at her clothes and pushing her down onto the floor of the storeroom where she had worked. The pistol had been in his belt, and she had grabbed it, and it had gone off, and then he was dead and she was running. The law would not care about her reasons. Women did not shoot men and walk away free, not in 1882, not anywhere. So she had run, taking nothing but the clothes on her back and the gun that had damned her. She had thought about throwing it away 100 times during her flight, but something had stopped her. Maybe she had known even then that she would need it one last time. The sun touched the edge of the mountains to the west, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like fire. Delilah raised the pistol, feeling the cold metal of the barrel as she pressed it against her temple. Her hand was shaking. She closed her eyes. Then she heard the horse. At first, she thought the fever was making her imagine things. But the sound grew louder, the steady clip-clop of hooves on hard, packed dirt, accompanied by the creak of leather and the jingle of bridle chains. Delilah opened her eyes and lowered the gun, staring down the empty street toward the edge of town. A rider emerged from the heat shimmer like a mirage solidifying into reality. He sat tall in the saddle, his silhouette sharp against the burning sky. As he drew closer, Delilah could make out more details. A broad-brimmed hat pulled low against the sun, a dark vest over a faded red shirt, leather chaps dusty from travel. He rode a buckskin mare that looked as tired as Delilah felt, its head hanging low, its pace steady but slow. The cowboy had not seen her yet. She could slip back into the saloon, hide in the shadows, let him pass through without knowing she was there. But something in her refused to move. Maybe it was the fever. Maybe it was something else. She stayed where she was, the gun still in her lap, and waited. He saw her when he was about 50 yards away. She watched him straighten in the saddle, his hand moving instinctively toward the rifle that hung in a scabbard by his knee. Then he seemed to relax slightly, though his hand stayed near the weapon. He kept coming, guiding his horse toward the saloon with the careful wariness of a man who had learned not to trust empty towns or unexpected strangers. When he was close enough that she could see his face beneath the brim of his hat, he reined in his horse. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-darkened skin and a few days' worth of dark stubble along his jaw. His eyes were a surprising shade of blue-green, like water in a desert canyon, and they studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Madam," he said, his voice rough from dust and disuse, "you look like you could use some help." Delilah meant to tell him to go away, to leave her to her business, but when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "Do you have any water?" The cowboy swung down from his saddle immediately, reaching for the canteen that hung from his saddle horn. He approached slowly, carefully, like she was a wild animal that might bolt. When he was close enough, he held out the canteen. Delilah grabbed it with trembling hands and drank. The water was warm and tasted of leather and metal, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever experienced. She gulped it down desperately, feeling it soothe her parched throat, until the cowboy gently took the canteen back. "Easy now," he said. "Not too much at once, or you will be sick." Small sips. He handed it back to her, and this time she forced herself to drink more slowly, though every instinct screamed at her to drain it dry. When she finally lowered the canteen, she found him watching her with concern in those strange blue-green eyes. "How long have you been without water?" he asked. "3 days," Delilah said. Her voice was hoarse and cracked. "Maybe longer." The cowboy let out a low whistle. "3 days in this heat. You are lucky to be alive." He paused, his eyes moving over her, taking in her torn dress, her blistered feet, the gun in her lap. "What are you doing out here alone?" Delilah stiffened. "That is none of your business." "Fair enough." He did not look offended. "My name is Benjamin Porter. Most folks call me Ben. I am a horse wrangler on my way to Silver City to deliver some stock. Stopped here because my mare needed a rest and I thought I might find some water in the well." "The well is dry," Delilah said. Ben grimaced. "Figured it might be from the look of this place, but I had to check." He studied her for another moment, then said, "You got a name, madam?" She hesitated. Giving him her real name felt dangerous, like handing him a piece of evidence that could be used against her. But lying felt wrong somehow, and she was too tired and sick to invent something believable. "Delilah," she said finally. "Delilah Walsh, Miss Walsh." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that might have been gallant if they had not been standing in a ghost town while the sun set, and she held a gun in her lap. "Are you running from something?" The question was so direct that it caught her off guard. She stared at him, trying to gauge his intentions. His face gave nothing away. It was weathered and honest-looking, with the kind of lines around the eyes that came from squinting at distant horizons and smiling at simple pleasures. "What makes you think that?" she asked carefully. "Well, you are alone in a ghost town with no water, no supplies, and a gun you look about ready to use. And you have that look about you. The look of someone who has been running hard and does not know where else to go." Delilah felt something crack inside her chest. Maybe it was the kindness in his voice, or maybe it was just the relief of having another human being to talk to after days of silence and desperation. Her eyes filled with tears, which she wiped away angrily with the back of her hand. "I killed a man," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "In Santa Fe. He attacked me and I shot him and then I ran. I have been walking ever since." She waited for Ben to step back, to reach for his rifle, to tell her he was taking her into the nearest law office. Instead, he just nodded slowly, like she had confirmed something he had already suspected. "He attacked you in a bad way?" Ben asked quietly. Delilah looked down at the gun in her lap. "Yes." Then you did what you had to do. His voice was matter of fact, without judgment. And the law did not see it that way, I am guessing. I did not wait around to find out. I knew what they would say. A woman working in a store alone with a man, his word against mine. Except his word was dead, so it would just be everyone else's word against mine, and I knew how that would go. Ben was quiet for a moment, his gaze shifting to the darkening mountains. You planning to use that gun on yourself? The question hung in the air between them. Delilah could not see any point in lying. I was thinking about it. Because of the law, or because you are out of water and hope? Both, I suppose. Ben crouched down so that he was at eye level with her, his movements slow and deliberate. This close, she could see that his eyes were more green than blue, with flecks of gold near the pupils. Miss Walsh, I do not know you and you do not know me. But I can tell you this. Dying in a ghost town because you are scared and thirsty is not the way to go. You survived 3 days in this desert with no water. That takes strength. That takes will. Those are not things you throw away when someone offers you a drink and a way out. There is no way out, Delilah said. They will be looking for me. Santa Fe is a long way from here, and Silver City is close, just another day's ride. It is a big town, lots of people coming and going with the mines. A woman could disappear there if she wanted to, start over. Why would you help me? Delilah asked. You do not know me. For all you know, I am a murderer. You killed a man who was attacking you. That is not murder, that is survival. Ben stood up, offering her his hand. Come on, let me get you to Silver City, get some food in you, some rest. Then you can decide what to do next, but make that decision when you are not half dead from thirst and fear. Delilah looked at his outstretched hand. It was calloused and scarred, the hand of a man who worked hard for his living. She thought about the pistol in her lap, about the darkness that had been closing in around her for days, about the emptiness of the ghost town and the emptiness inside her. Then she thought about water and food and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was still a path forward. She took his hand. Ben pulled her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed. The fever made the world tilt and spin, and she would have fallen if he had not caught her around the waist. He was solid and warm, and she could smell horse and leather and sweat, earthy and real. Easy, he said. When did you last eat? I do not remember, Delilah admitted. Ben cursed softly under his breath. All right, first things first. He guided her to sit back down on the steps, then went to his horse and began rummaging through his saddlebags. He came back with a piece of dried beef and some hardtack. It is not much, but it will help. Eat slowly. Delilah took the food with trembling hands and bit into the jerky. It was tough and salty and required a lot of chewing, but it was the first food she had tasted in days, and it was wonderful. She gnawed at it slowly, while Ben went back to his horse and started unpacking more supplies. He built a small fire in the street as the last light faded from the sky, using broken boards from one of the nearby buildings for fuel. Then he set up a simple camp, laying out his bedroll and saddle blanket, all the while keeping up a steady stream of quiet talk that seemed designed to keep her from slipping into panic or despair. He told her about the horses he was bringing to Silver City, a string of 6 Mustangs he had spent the last 3 months breaking and training. He talked about the ranch where he had grown up in Texas, and about his father who had died when Ben was 18, leaving him to care for his mother and 2 younger sisters until they were old enough to manage on their own. He talked about the open range, and the way the stars looked from the back of a horse when you were night herding cattle, and about the time he had tracked a lost foal for 2 days through the desert and found it alive against all odds. Delilah listened, letting his words wash over her like the water from his canteen. She ate the jerky and hardtack, washing it down with small sips of water and felt strength beginning to seep back into her body. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the darkness, and for the first time in weeks, she did not feel entirely alone. When the food was gone and the fire had burned down to embers, Ben spread out the saddle blanket near the fire and gestured to it. "You take that. I will keep watch." "You do not have to do that," Delilah said. "There is no one else here. You are sick with fever and you have been through hell. You need rest. I can sleep tomorrow when we are riding. The mare knows the way to Silver City well enough that I can doze in the saddle." Delilah wanted to argue, but she was too exhausted. She lay down on the blanket, which smelled of horse and wood smoke, and pulled her torn shawl around her shoulders. The ground was hard beneath her, but after days of walking and nights of sleeping in whatever shelter she could find, it felt almost comfortable. She closed her eyes, expecting sleep to take her immediately. Instead, she found herself watching Ben through half-lidded eyes. He sat by the fire, his rifle across his knees, his hat tilted back on his head. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the straight nose, the thoughtful set of his mouth. He looked tired but alert, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the fire with the wariness of someone who had spent a lot of time in wild places. "Why are you really helping me?" Delilah asked quietly. Ben glanced at her, surprise flickering across his face. "I thought you were asleep." "I am too tired to sleep. Why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "I told you, it is the right thing to do." "That is not a reason. Plenty of people know the right thing to do and do not do it." Ben shifted, his expression thoughtful. "I had a sister," he said finally. "Annie. She was the middle one, 2 years younger than me. Sweet girl, always laughing, always seeing the good in people." He paused, his jaw tightening. "When she was 19, she went to work for a family in San Antonio. Respectable family, or so everyone thought. The husband started bothering her, making advances. She pushed him off, told him no, he did not like that." He stopped, and Delilah saw his hands clench around the rifle. She fought him, left scratches all over his face. But he was bigger and stronger, and when it was over, he told everyone she had tried to seduce him and he had to fight her off. His wife believed him. The whole town believed him. Annie was ruined. No one would give her work. People crossed the street to avoid her. She lasted 6 months before she took a bottle of laudanum and did not wake up. "I am sorry," Delilah whispered. "So am I." Ben looked at her, and there was old pain in his eyes mixed with something fiercer. "I could not help Annie. I was off on a cattle drive when it happened, did not even know until I came home and found her grave. But I can help you, so I am going to." Delilah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She did not try to wipe them away this time. "What if I am not worth helping?" "Everyone is worth helping," Ben said simply. "You just have to believe it." She closed her eyes then, and this time sleep came, pulling her down into darkness that was no longer empty and terrifying but simply restful. Her last conscious thought was that Ben Porter was still sitting by the fire, keeping watch, and that for the first time since Santa Fe she felt safe. When Delilah woke, the sun was already climbing the sky and Ben was packing up the camp. She sat up, feeling disoriented and achy. The fever had broken during the night, leaving her weak but clearer-headed. Her clothes were damp with sweat, and her mouth tasted of dust and sickness. "There is some water left," Ben said, handing her the canteen. "We will need to go easy on it until we reach Silver City, but you should drink." Delilah drank gratefully, then splashed a little water on her face, feeling the grit and dirt come away. She looked down at herself and grimaced. Her dress was a disaster, torn and filthy and barely decent. "I look like something that crawled out of a grave," she said. "You look like someone who survived," Ben corrected. He finished rolling up his bedroll and tied it behind the saddle. "Can you ride?" "I have ridden before, not recently." "Good enough. The mare is gentle, she will not give you trouble." He paused, looking at the pistol that still lay on the steps where Delilah had left it. "You should keep that, just in case." Delilah picked up the gun, feeling its familiar weight. "I do not want to keep it, I do not want to remember." "I understand, but out here, it is foolish to go unarmed." "You do not have to use it, you just have to have it." He was right, of course. Delilah tucked the pistol into the pocket she had sewn into her skirt, feeling it pull at the fabric. Then she stood, testing her legs. They felt shaky but functional. Ben helped her onto the mare, his hand steady on her waist as he lifted her into the saddle. She settled herself, gripping the saddle horn as the world swayed around her. Ben swung up behind her, his arms coming around her to take the reins. She stiffened at the contact, old fear rising in her throat. "I have got you," Ben said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "I will not let you fall." Slowly, Delilah forced herself to relax. This was not Santa Fe. This was not that man. This was Ben Porter, who had given her water and food and hope when she had none. She leaned back slightly, letting herself rest against his solid chest, and felt his arms adjust to support her weight. "All right," she said. "I am ready." They rode out of Pinos Altos as the sun climbed higher, leaving the ghost town to its dust and memories. The desert stretched out before them, vast and empty, broken only by the occasional mesa or outcropping of rock. The heat built quickly, pressing down on them like a physical weight, but Ben kept the mare to a steady pace that ate up the miles without exhausting the animal. As they rode, Ben talked. He seemed to understand that Delilah needed the sound of his voice, needed the distraction from her own dark thoughts. He told her about the horses waiting for him in a corral outside Silver City, about the buyer who was expecting them, about the money he would make from the sale and what he planned to do with it. "I am saving up to buy my own land," he said. "Nothing fancy. Just a small spread where I can raise horses and maybe some cattle, somewhere with good water and grass. I have been looking at some places up north, around the Gila River country." "That sounds nice," Delilah said. Her voice was still hoarse and talking hurt, but she wanted to contribute something to the conversation. "It does it not? I am tired of drifting, tired of working other people's land and following other people's orders. I want something that is mine, something I can build." He paused. "What about you? What did you want before Santa Fe?" Delilah had to think about that. Her dreams seemed so distant now, buried under weeks of fear and flight. "I wanted to own my own dress shop," she said finally. "I was good with a needle. My mother taught me. I thought if I could save enough money, I could rent a little storefront somewhere and make dresses for the respectable ladies. Maybe do some fine embroidery work on the side." "That is a good dream," Ben said. "Why did you stop?" "My mother died of pneumonia 3 years ago." "My father had already passed. I did not have any other family, so I had to find work. I ended up in Santa Fe working at a general store, stocking shelves and keeping the books. The pay was not much, and I could never seem to save anything. And then—" She trailed off, not wanting to finish the sentence. "And then that bastard ruined everything," Ben finished for her. "Yes." They rode in silence for a while. The sun was directly overhead now, turning the desert into a furnace. Sweat trickled down Delilah's back, and she could feel Ben's shirt sticking to her through the thin fabric of her dress. The mare plodded on, her head low, her breathing steady despite the heat. "You could still have your dress shop," Ben said eventually. "In Silver City. It is a good town, lots of miners with money to spend and wives who want nice things. You could start over there." "With what money?" Delilah asked bitterly. "I have nothing. I left everything behind when I ran. You have your skills, you have your hands, that is something. It is not enough. Maybe not right away, but you could find work, save up again. It would take time, but it is possible. Delilah wanted to believe him, but the future seemed like a door that had slammed shut. She had killed a man. She was a fugitive. How could she possibly build a normal life with that hanging over her, as if reading her thoughts? Ben said, "You know, Santa Fe is 3 weeks hard riding from Silver City. News travels slow out here. Unless they sent a telegram or a wanted poster, no one in Silver City is going to know what happened. You could be anyone you wanted to be. You mean lie. I mean start over. Leave the past where it belongs." It was a seductive idea. Delilah turned it over in her mind as they rode, examining it from all angles. Could she really do that? Could she walk into Silver City and pretend to be just another woman looking for work, with no blood on her hands and no nightmares in her head? "I do not know if I can," she admitted. "You do not have to decide right now," Ben said. "Just think about it." They rode on through the afternoon, stopping occasionally to let the mare rest and to take small sips from the dwindling water supply. The landscape began to change as they drew closer to Silver City, the flat desert giving way to rolling hills dotted with juniper and pinon. In the distance, Delilah could see mountains rising up, their peaks still dusted with snow despite the summer heat. As evening approached, they came over a rise and saw Silver City spread out in the valley below. It was bigger than Delilah had expected, a sprawling collection of buildings that stretched along the banks of a creek. Even from a distance, she could hear the sounds of civilization, hammering and sawing, the bray of mules, voices raised in conversation and argument. Smoke rose from dozens of chimneys, and the evening light glinted off windows and tin roofs. "There she is," Ben said. "Silver City. Your new beginning if you want it." Delilah stared down at the town, feeling a mixture of hope and terror. "Where will I go? What will I do? First, we get you cleaned up and fed properly. There is a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Chen. She is a good woman, does not ask too many questions. You can stay there while you figure things out. I have no money to pay her. I will cover it for the first week. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better. You can pay me back when you are on your feet." Delilah turned her head to look at him, their faces suddenly very close. "Why are you doing all this? Really?" Ben met her eyes and something passed between them, something that made Delilah's breath catch in her throat. "Maybe I need to believe that good things can still happen," he said quietly. "That not every story has to end like Annie's. Or maybe I just could not ride away and leave you there to die." "Does it matter?" "I suppose not," Delilah whispered. They rode down into Silver City as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold. The streets were busy with people finishing their day's work. Miners heading toward the saloons, women carrying packages from the mercantile, children playing in the dusty street. Delilah pulled her shawl up over her head, suddenly paranoid that someone would see her and know what she had done, but no one gave her a second glance. She was just another dusty traveler in a town full of them. Ben guided the mare through the streets with the confidence of someone who knew where he was going. He stopped in front of a 2-story building with a hand-painted sign that read, "Chen's Boarding House." It was a neat, well-maintained place with flower boxes in the windows and a swept porch. Ben dismounted and helped Delilah down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and he had to hold her up for a moment until she found her balance. "Come on," he said. "Let me introduce you to Mrs. Chen." The boarding house smelled of cooking food and soap, clean and welcoming. A small Chinese woman emerged from a back room, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50 years old, with gray streaking her black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes that took in everything at a glance. "Ben Porter," she said, her English accented but clear. "You are back. And you bring a friend. Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Delilah Walsh. She has had a hard journey and needs a room and some help. I'm hoping you can provide both." Mrs. Chen looked Delilah up and down, taking in her torn dress, her gaunt face, her haunted eyes. Something in the older woman's expression softened. "You look like you have traveled through hell, child." "Something like that," Delilah said. "Well, you are here now. I have a room. It is small but clean. Come." She turned to Ben. "You will stay for supper. I have made beef stew." "I would be grateful for it," Ben said. Mrs. Chen led Delilah up a narrow staircase to a small room on the second floor. It held a narrow bed with a quilt, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and a small trunk at the foot of the bed. A window looked out over the street. It was simple but spotlessly clean, and to Delilah it looked like paradise. "There is water in the pitcher," Mrs. Chen said. "I will bring you some clean clothes. You are about the same size as my daughter was." She did not elaborate on what had happened to her daughter, and Delilah did not ask. "Wash yourself, put on the clean clothes, and come down to eat. You need food." "Thank you," Delilah said, her voice breaking on the words. "Thank you so much." Mrs. Chen patted her hand. "We all need help sometimes. It is no shame to accept it." When the older woman had left, Delilah stripped off her ruined dress and washed herself with the water from the pitcher. It was cold but clean, and she scrubbed at her skin until it was pink, trying to wash away the dust and the fear and the memory of everything that had happened. When she was done, she felt more human than she had in weeks. Mrs. Chen returned with a simple dress of brown cotton, along with fresh undergarments and stockings. The clothes fit reasonably well, though they were a little loose on Delilah's thin frame. She braided her wet hair and went downstairs, following the smell of food to a dining room where Ben was already seated at a long table. He stood when she entered, and she saw something change in his expression. "You look better," he said. "I feel better, more like myself." They sat down to eat, joined by a few other boarders. A young couple, a grizzled prospector and a traveling salesman. The stew was thick and rich, full of beef and vegetables, and Delilah ate slowly, forcing herself not to gulp it down despite her hunger. Around the table, conversation flowed easily. Talk of the mines and the weather and the latest news from back east. No one asked Delilah where she had come from or what her business was, and she was grateful for the anonymity. After supper, Ben walked Delilah back upstairs to her room. They stood awkwardly in the hallway, neither quite sure what to say. "I should go check on the horses," Ben said. "I have them in a corral at the edge of town, but I will be back tomorrow to check on you." "You do not have to do that," Delilah said. "You have already done more than enough." "I know I do not have to. I want to." He hesitated, then added, "Get some rest, real rest. You are safe here." "Thank you, Ben, for everything. I would be dead if not for you. You would have found a way to survive. You are stronger than you think." He reached out and squeezed her hand briefly, then turned and walked back down the stairs. Delilah went into her room and closed the door. She sat on the bed, feeling the soft mattress beneath her, and for the first time since Santa Fe, she cried. Not from fear or despair, but from relief and exhaustion and the overwhelming kindness of strangers. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she lay down on the bed, pulled the quilt over herself, and slept without nightmares. The next few days passed in a blur of rest and recovery. Delilah spent most of her time sleeping, her body demanding payment for the weeks of abuse she had put it through. Mrs. Chen brought her meals and made sure she drank plenty of water, and slowly, Delilah felt strength returning to her body and clarity to her mind. Ben came by every day, usually in the afternoon. He never stayed long, just checked on her and reported on his activities. He had delivered his horses and collected his payment. He was looking at a piece of land up north that might be suitable for his ranch. He had bought some supplies for the journey. Small talk, really, but Delilah found herself looking forward to his visits with an intensity that surprised her. On the fourth day, she felt well enough to leave her room. She dressed in the brown cotton dress and made her way downstairs, where she found Mrs. Chen working in the kitchen. "Good morning," the older woman said. "You look much better. Your color has returned." "I feel much better, thanks to you," Delilah said. "Mrs. Chen, I need to find work. I cannot keep accepting charity." Mrs. Chen gave her a measuring look. "What can you do?" "I can sew. I am good at it. I can also keep books and manage a store. I can cook and clean, though I am better with a needle than a pot." "Can you show me your sewing?" Delilah nodded. Mrs. Chen produced some fabric scraps and a needle and thread, and Delilah set to work. She had not sewn in weeks, but her hands remembered the movements, the precise tiny stitches, the way to shape fabric into something beautiful. She worked quickly, creating a small sample of embroidery that showed off her skills. Mrs. Chen examined the work carefully, her expression thoughtful. "This is very fine, better than most seamstresses in town." She paused. "I have a friend, Mrs. Catherine Sullivan. She runs a dress shop on Main Street. She has been looking for help. I will speak to her." "Really?" Hope flared in Delilah's chest. Thank you so much. Do not thank me yet. Catherine is particular. She will want to see your work for herself, but I think she will hire you." Mrs. Chen smiled. "You have good hands, child. Skilled hands. That is worth something." 2 days later, Delilah found herself standing in front of Sullivan's dress shop, her heart pounding. The storefront was elegant, with a large window displaying mannequins dressed in beautiful gowns. Through the glass, she could see bolts of fabric in every color imaginable, and the gleam of sewing machines. She pushed open the door and a bell chimed. A woman looked up from behind the counter. She was perhaps 40, with auburn hair going gray at the temples and a face that was handsome rather than pretty. She wore a well-tailored dress of dark green silk that spoke of both prosperity and good taste. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. "I am Delilah Walsh. Mrs. Chen sent me. She said you might need help." Catherine Sullivan's expression changed, becoming more interested. "Ah, yes, she told me about you, said you are a skilled seamstress." "I like to think so, madam." "Well, we shall see. Come to the back." Delilah followed Catherine through the shop to a workroom in the back. 2 other women were there, both bent over sewing machines, their hands moving with practiced efficiency. Catherine gestured to a work table covered with fabric. "I need the bodice of this dress altered. The customer has gained weight since her fitting. Let me see what you can do." Delilah examined the dress, a blue silk confection with elaborate pleating and lace trim. She could see immediately what needed to be done. She set to work, her fingers quick and sure, letting out the seams and adjusting the fit while preserving the original design. Catherine watched her work with sharp eyes, occasionally asking questions or making comments. When Delilah finished, Catherine examined the alteration carefully, turning the dress this way and that, checking the seams and the evenness of the stitches. Finally, she nodded. "You will do," she said. "Wages are $15 a month plus room and board if you need it. Hours are 8 to 6, 6 days a week. Sundays off. Can you start tomorrow?" "Yes," Delilah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, I can start tomorrow. Good. Be here at 8 sharp." Catherine paused, then added more gently, "Mrs. Chen told me you had some trouble in your past. I do not need to know the details, but I want you to know that what happens in this shop stays in this shop. My girls are discreet, and I expect them to be treated with respect. If anyone bothers you, you tell me. Understood, understood, Delilah said, feeling tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. Call me Catherine, and do not thank me. If you are as good as you seem to be, I should be thanking you. Good seamstresses are hard to find out here. Delilah practically floated back to the boarding house. She had work. Real work, doing something she loved for wages that would let her pay her own way. It felt like a miracle. She found Ben waiting for her on the porch, his hat in his hands, looking nervous. When he saw her, his face broke into a smile. "You look happy," he said. "I got a job at the dress shop. I start tomorrow." "That is wonderful." He stood, then shifted his weight awkwardly. "Delilah, I need to tell you something. I am leaving tomorrow. Heading up north to look at that land I told you about. I will be gone for a couple of weeks, maybe longer." Delilah felt her happiness deflate like a punctured balloon. "Oh, of course, you have your own life, your own plans. I do not have to go. I could stay if you need me to." "No," she forced herself to smile. "No, you should go. This is your dream, your ranch. You should not put it off because of me." Ben stepped closer, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. "Delilah, these past few days, getting to know you, it has meant something to me, more than I expected." "It has meant something to me too," Delilah admitted. "You saved my life, Ben. Not just in Pinos Altos, but here. You gave me a chance to start over. You saved yourself. I just helped a little." He reached out and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused against hers. "I will come back. When I am done up north, I will come back to Silver City if you want me to." "I want you to," Delilah said softly. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, a gesture that was old-fashioned and sweet and made her heart ache. "Then I will, I promise." He left the next morning at dawn. Delilah watched from her window as he rode out of town, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. She stood there until he disappeared from view, feeling an emptiness she had not expected. She barely knew Ben Porter, had known him less than a week, but somehow he had become important to her in a way she could not quite explain. Pushing the feeling aside, she got ready for her first day of work. She would not waste the opportunity he had helped give her. She would build a life here, a good life, and when he came back, she would show him what she had accomplished. The dress shop became Delilah's refuge and her salvation. Catherine was demanding but fair, and the work was exactly what Delilah had always dreamed of doing. She spent her days surrounded by beautiful fabrics, creating gowns for the wives and daughters of Silver City's prosperous merchants and mine owners. The other seamstresses, a quiet German woman named Greta and a cheerful girl from Boston named Lily, accepted her without question, and slowly, Delilah began to feel like she belonged. The weeks passed. Summer deepened into early fall and the heat began to ease. Delilah fell into a routine. Work during the day, dinner at the boarding house in the evening, occasional walks through town on Sunday afternoons. She saved every penny she could, keeping it in a small cloth bag hidden in her room. Someday, she told herself, she would have enough to start her own shop. But for now, this was enough. She tried not to think about Ben too much, but he crept into her thoughts at odd moments. When she saw a cowboy riding past the shop window, when she heard someone laugh in a certain way. At night, when she lay in bed and remembered the feeling of his arms around her as they rode, the warmth of his chest against her back, the gentle rumble of his voice in her ear, she did not know what she felt for him. Gratitude, certainly. But there was something more, something that made her heart beat faster when she thought about seeing him again. Was it love? She did not know. She had never been in love before. All she knew was that she missed him and that the world seemed a little dimmer without him in it. 6 weeks after Ben had left, Delilah was working on a particularly complex wedding dress when the shop bell chimed. She glanced up automatically, then froze, her needle halfway through the fabric. Ben stood in the doorway, dusty from travel, his hat in his hands. His eyes found hers immediately, and the smile that spread across his face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Hello, Delilah," he said. She set down her work with trembling hands and stood. "Ben, you came back. I said I would." He crossed the shop in 3 long strides and stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell leather and horse and the sage-scented air of the desert. "I have been thinking about you every day." "I have been thinking about you too," she admitted. Catherine appeared from the back room, taking in the scene with shrewd eyes. "Miss Walsh, I think you should take your lunch break now, but I just had lunch an hour ago." "Then take another one." Catherine's voice was amused. "Go on. We can manage without you for a while." Delilah removed her work apron and followed Ben outside. The street was busy with afternoon traffic, people hurrying about their business. Ben took her arm and guided her down a side street to a small park where cottonwood trees provided shade. They sat on a bench, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Delilah was intensely aware of Ben beside her, of the solid warmth of him, of the way her body seemed to lean toward his of its own accord. "Tell me about the land," she said finally. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I did." Ben's voice was excited. "It is perfect, Delilah. 160 acres in the Gila Valley with a creek running through it year-round. Good grass, enough timber for building, and a view that stretches all the way to the mountains. I put a deposit on it. If I can come up with the rest of the money in the next 3 months, it is mine." "That is wonderful," Delilah said, meaning it. "You must be so excited." "I am, but the whole time I was up there, all I could think about was how I wanted to show it to you. How I wanted to hear what you thought, whether you liked it, whether you could see yourself." He trailed off, suddenly looking uncertain. "Whether I could see myself what?" Delilah prompted. Ben turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Delilah, I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. When I found you in Pinos Altos, it was like fate put you in my path. And every day since then, I have been more certain that I do not want to build that ranch alone. I want to build it with you." Delilah's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "Ben, I do not know what to say. Say you feel something for me. Say I am not imagining this connection between us." "You are not imagining it," Delilah said. "I do feel something for you. I have from the beginning. But Ben, you do not really know me. You do not know what I have done, who I really am. I know you are strong and brave and skilled with your hands. I know you survived things that would have broken a weaker person. I know that when I am with you, I feel more alive than I have ever felt before." He squeezed her hands. "Whatever you think you are, whatever you think you have done, it does not matter to me. All that matters is who you are now and who you want to be going forward." Delilah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I want to be someone who deserves you. Someone who can stand beside you and build something good. But I am afraid, Ben. I am afraid that my past will catch up with me, that I will bring you trouble. Then we will face it together." Ben reached up and wiped away her tears with his thumb. "Delilah Walsh, I am not asking you to marry me today. I am not even asking you to decide right now. I am just asking you to give us a chance. Let me court you properly. Let us spend time together and see where this goes. Can you do that?" Delilah thought about the gun she still kept hidden in her room, about the nightmares that still came sometimes in the dark hours before dawn, about the man she had killed and the law that might still be looking for her. Then she thought about the way Ben looked at her, like she was something precious and valuable. She thought about his gentle hands and his kind words and the future he was offering her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I can do that." Ben pulled her into his arms, and Delilah let herself be held, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek. For the first time since Santa Fe, she let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she could have a life worth living, that maybe she could be happy again. The next 3 months were the happiest of Delilah's life. Ben stayed in Silver City, taking odd jobs to earn money while he courted her with a patience and tenderness that made her fall more in love with him every day. They walked together on Sunday afternoons, exploring the hills around the town and talking about everything and nothing. They attended a church social, where Ben danced with her in a barn decorated with lanterns and wildflowers, his hand warm on her waist as they spun through the simple steps. They sat on the porch of the boarding house in the evenings, watching the stars come out and sharing their dreams for the future. Delilah learned things about Ben that made her love him even more. She learned that he had a beautiful singing voice, though he was shy about using it. She learned that he had a deep reverence for nature and could identify every bird and plant they encountered on their walks. She learned that he was patient and thoughtful, never pushing her for more than she was ready to give, content to let their relationship develop at its own pace. In turn, she opened up to him about her own life. She told him about her mother, who had taught her to sew and had died too young. She told him about her dreams of owning a dress shop and about the fear that had driven her since Santa Fe. Ben listened to everything without judgment, offering comfort when she needed it and practical advice when she asked for it. "The past is the past," he told her one evening as they sat watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. "It shaped you, but it does not have to define you. You get to decide who you are, Delilah. No one else." By December, Delilah knew she was in love with Ben Porter. She was in love with his kindness and his strength, his dreams and his determination. She was in love with the way he made her feel safe, but also challenged her to be braver than she thought she could be. And when he finally kissed her one cold December evening, his lips warm against hers and his hands gentle on her face, she knew she had found what she had been looking for all her life. "I love you," Ben said when they broke apart, his forehead resting against hers. "I have loved you since Pinos Altos, I think. Maybe even since that first moment when I saw you sitting on those steps with a gun in your lap and courage in your eyes." "I love you too," Delilah said. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes. Do not be scared, be happy, be hopeful. We are going to have a good life together, Delilah. I promise you that." 3 days before Christmas, Ben came to the dress shop and asked to speak to Delilah privately. Catherine shooed them into the back room, a knowing smile on her face. Ben took Delilah's hands in his, and she could feel that he was nervous. "I have saved enough money for the land," he said. "I am closing on it next week. I will need to go up there and start building, get a cabin up before winter really sets in. But before I go, I need to ask you something." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, a simple gold band with a small blue stone set in it. "It is not much," Ben said, "but it belonged to my grandmother, and my mother wanted me to give it to the woman I married. Delilah Walsh, will you marry me? Will you come north with me and help me build our ranch, our life together?" Delilah looked at the ring, then at Ben's face, so open and hopeful and full of love. She thought about everything she had been through, all the darkness and fear, and how this man had pulled her back from the edge and shown her that life could still be beautiful. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, I will marry you." Ben slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a joy that made her dizzy. When they emerged from the back room, Catherine took one look at Delilah's glowing face and laughed. "I suppose I need to find a new seamstress," she said. "I am sorry," Delilah said. "I know this is sudden. Do not be sorry, be happy." Catherine hugged her. "You deserve happiness, child, and that man out there clearly adores you. Go build your life with him." They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the small church on the edge of town. Mrs. Chen and Catherine stood witness, along with a few other friends Delilah had made during her time in Silver City. Ben wore his best shirt and a new vest, and Delilah wore a dress of cream silk that she had made herself, simple but beautiful. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Ben kissed her, Delilah felt like her heart might burst with happiness. They spent their wedding night at the boarding house, in a room that Mrs. Chen had decorated with wildflowers and candles. Ben was gentle and patient, his touch reverent, and when he made love to her for the first time, Delilah felt all her fears and old wounds begin to heal. This was what love was supposed to be, she realized. This giving and taking, this joining of bodies and hearts, this feeling of being cherished and wanted. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Ben's arms around her and her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Are you happy?" Ben asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I am happier than I ever thought I could be," Delilah said. "You gave me my life back, Ben. You gave me a future." "We gave each other a future," Ben corrected. "I was just drifting before I found you. Now I have a purpose. I have something to build toward." "What do you think it will be like?" Delilah asked. "The ranch. Hard work," Ben said honestly. "Long days, short money at first, lots of uncertainty, but we will have each other and we will have land that is ours. We will build a home, raise horses, maybe have some children someday if we are blessed. It will be a good life, Delilah. Not an easy one, but a good one." "That sounds perfect," Delilah said. They left Silver City 2 days later, their belongings packed on a mule that Ben had bought with some of his savings. The journey north took 5 days, following old trails through high desert country that grew progressively greener as they climbed toward the mountains. The weather was cold, but the days were clear, and Delilah found herself falling in love with the landscape, with its vast open spaces and dramatic vistas. On the afternoon of the 5th day, they crested a rise and Ben reined in his horse. "There," he said, pointing. "That is our land." Delilah looked where he was pointing and caught her breath. The valley spread out below them was beautiful, a green oasis carved by a winding creek. Cottonwoods lined the water, their bare branches stark against the winter sky. Beyond the creek, the land rolled gently upward to meet pine-covered foothills, and in the distance, snow-capped peaks gleamed in the afternoon sun. "It is beautiful," she breathed. "Come on," Ben said, excitement clear in his voice. "Let me show you where I want to build the cabin." They rode down into the valley, following the creek until they came to a spot where the land flattened out into a natural meadow. Ben had already started clearing the site, and Delilah could see a pile of logs waiting to be turned into walls. "I figured we would build here," Ben said, dismounting and helping Delilah down. "Close enough to the creek for water, but high enough that we will not flood in spring. There is good drainage and we will have sun most of the day. What do you think?" Delilah walked around the clearing, imagining the cabin that would stand here, the life they would build. "I think it is perfect," she said. "When do we start building?" "Tomorrow, if the weather holds." Ben grinned at her. "You sure you are up for this? It is going to be rough living for a while." "I survived 3 days in the desert with no water," Delilah reminded him. "I think I can handle rough living." They set up a temporary camp that night, sleeping in a tent that Ben had brought. As Delilah lay wrapped in blankets with Ben's arms around her, listening to the creek murmur and the wind rustle through the trees, she felt a peace she had never known before. This place, this wild and beautiful place, was home. She could feel it in her bones. The next months were indeed hard work. Ben taught Delilah how to notch logs and pack chinking, how to build a fireplace that would draw properly and a roof that would not leak. They worked from dawn to dusk every day, their hands blistered and their backs aching, but slowly the cabin took shape. It was small, just one room with a loft, but it was solid and well built, and every log represented their combined effort and determination. By early spring, the cabin was finished. They had a real roof over their heads, a fireplace that kept them warm, and a door that locked. Delilah made curtains from fabric she had brought from Silver City and sewed quilts to cover their bed. Ben built furniture, a table, chairs, a bed frame, shelves for their few possessions. It was simple and rough, but it was theirs. As the weather warmed, they started the real work of the ranch. Ben rode out to find wild horses, spending days at a time tracking and observing before attempting to capture any. When he finally brought in his first string of mustangs, Delilah helped him build a corral to hold them and watched in awe as he patiently, methodically worked with each animal, transforming wild creatures into horses that could be ridden and sold. Delilah discovered that she had a talent for gentling the horses. She was patient and soft-spoken, and the animals responded to her in a way that amazed Ben. Together, they made a good team, each bringing different skills and strengths to the work. They also started a garden, breaking ground near the creek and planting vegetables. Delilah had never gardened before, but she learned, getting dirt under her nails and sun on her face. She learned to can and preserve food for the winter, to make soap and candles, to do all the 100 small tasks that kept a household running in the wilderness. It was hard work, harder than anything Delilah had ever done. But it was also satisfying in a way she had never experienced. Every improvement they made, every horse they sold, every harvest they brought in represented their combined effort. They were building something real and lasting, and they were doing it together. As summer deepened, Delilah began to notice changes in her body. She was tired more often, and certain smells made her nauseous. Her courses, which had always been regular, failed to come. She did not say anything to Ben at first, not wanting to get his hopes up if she was wrong. But when another month passed and the signs continued, she could no longer deny what was happening. She told him one evening as they sat outside the cabin, watching the stars come out. "Ben, I think I am going to have a baby." Ben went completely still, then turned to look at her, his eyes wide. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure. All the signs are there." A smile spread across his face, growing wider and wider until he was grinning like a fool. Then he let out a whoop that echoed across the valley and pulled Delilah into his arms, spinning her around. "We are going to have a baby," he said, his voice full of wonder. "A baby, Delilah, our baby." "I am scared," Delilah admitted. "I do not know anything about having babies or being a mother." "We will figure it out together," Ben said, "just like we have figured out everything else." "Oh, Delilah, this is wonderful. This is more than I ever hoped for." He kissed her then, long and deep, and Delilah felt some of her fear melt away. They would face this together, just like they had faced everything else. Together they could do anything. The pregnancy was not easy. Delilah was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down. Ben fussed over her constantly, trying to find things she could eat, doing more than his share of the work around the ranch. As summer turned to fall, the sickness finally eased, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that made even simple tasks feel overwhelming. Ben insisted they make a trip to Silver City so Delilah could see a doctor. The journey took 2 days, moving slowly to accommodate Delilah's condition. The doctor, a practical woman named Dr. Martha Reed who had trained back east, examined Delilah thoroughly and pronounced her healthy. "The baby should come in late January or early February," Dr. Reed said. "You are young and strong. You should do fine. But I want you to take it easy, especially as you get further along. No heavy lifting, plenty of rest, good food. What about when it is time? Ben asked. Should we come back to town in the middle of winter over mountain roads? Absolutely not. Too dangerous. Dr. Reed considered. I will come to you. Send word when the contractions start, and I will ride out. It is what I do for most of the ranch families out this way. Just make sure you have plenty of clean cloth, hot water, and a warm room ready. They returned to the ranch with supplies. Baby clothes that Delilah had bought at the mercantile, soft blankets, cloth for diapers, a cradle that Ben had commissioned from a carpenter. Delilah spent her evenings sewing tiny gowns and booties, marveling at how small they were, trying to imagine the child who would wear them. As winter closed in and Delilah's belly swelled, she found herself thinking about the past less and less. Santa Fe and the man she had killed felt like something that had happened to a different person, in a different life. That frightened girl in the ghost town was gone, replaced by a woman who was building a life and a family in this wild, beautiful place. One evening in early December, as they sat by the fire after supper, Delilah said, Ben, do you ever think about Pinos Altos, about how different things could have been? Ben looked up from the bridle he was mending. Sometimes, but only to be grateful that I stopped there that day. If I had ridden past, if I had been even an hour later, I would probably be dead, Delilah finished. I was so close to giving up, Ben, so close to ending it all. But you did not. You held on just long enough. He set aside his work and moved to sit beside her, taking her hand. Do you ever regret it? Coming with me, marrying me, building this life? Never, Delilah said firmly. This is the life I was meant to have. You are the man I was meant to love. I know that now. I know it too. Ben leaned over and kissed her forehead. You and this baby, you are my whole world now. Everything I do, everything I build, it is for you. The baby came on a cold February night in 1883, arriving in a rush after a long, difficult labor. Dr. Reed made it in time, thank God, and she coached Delilah through the ordeal with brisk efficiency while Ben paced outside the cabin, too nervous to sit still. When it was over and the baby's first cry pierced the air, Delilah collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but exhilarated. Dr. Reed cleaned the baby and wrapped it in a soft blanket, then placed it in Delilah's arms. You have a son, she said, smiling. A healthy, strong boy. Delilah looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect, and felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was howling with impressive volume for someone so small. He has got good lungs, Dr. Reed observed. That is a good sign. Can I come in? Ben's voice came from outside the door, tentative and anxious. Come in, Delilah called. Ben entered slowly, his eyes going first to Delilah, checking that she was all right, then dropping to the bundle in her arms. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside the bed, staring at his son with an expression of absolute wonder. He is perfect, Ben breathed. Look at him, Delilah. Look at what we made. He is pretty amazing, Delilah agreed. She shifted the baby so Ben could see him better. Do you want to hold him? Ben nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He took the baby with careful, reverent hands, cradling him against his chest. The baby stopped crying and blinked up at his father with unfocused eyes. Hello, son, Ben said softly. Welcome to the world. I am your father, and I promise I am going to do my best by you. Delilah watched her husband hold their child, and she felt tears sliding down her cheeks. These were not tears of sadness or fear, but of pure joy. She had been given a second chance at life, and she had taken it, and now she had this. A husband who loved her, a child who would grow up knowing he was wanted, and a home that was truly hers. What should we name him? Ben asked. They had discussed names before, but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at her son, Delilah knew exactly what his name should be. Samuel, she said. Samuel James Porter, for new beginnings. Samuel, Ben repeated, testing the name. I like it. Samuel James Porter, Sam. He smiled down at the baby. Hello, Sam. You are going to like it here. We have got horses and mountains and a creek to play in. And you have got a mother who loves you more than anything in the world and a father who is going to teach you everything he knows. Doctor. Reed stayed for 2 days, making sure both Delilah and the baby were healthy before she rode back to Silver City. Before she left, she pulled Ben aside. You have got a good family here, she said. Take care of them, and if you have any problems, send for me immediately. But I think you will be fine. Your wife is strong. The strongest person I know, Ben agreed. The first year of Sam's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder. Delilah had never known love like this, fierce and protective and all-consuming. She nursed Sam, changed his diapers, rocked him when he cried, and marveled at every small change. His first smile, his first laugh, the way his eyes followed her around the room. Ben was a devoted father, taking over care of Sam whenever he could to give Delilah a break. He built a larger cradle when Sam outgrew the first one, then a high chair, then a small bed. He sang to Sam in his beautiful voice, old cowboy songs and lullabies his mother had taught him. He carried Sam around the ranch, showing him the horses and the garden and the mountains, talking to him like he could understand every word. The ranch prospered. Word spread about Ben's skill with horses, and buyers came from all over the territory to purchase his stock. They added on to the cabin, building another room so Sam could have his own space, and a proper kitchen that made Delilah's work easier. They bought chickens and a milk cow. They planted an orchard, apple trees and peach trees that would not bear fruit for years, but represented faith in the future. When Sam was 2 years old, Delilah discovered she was pregnant again. This time she was not as frightened, having been through it once before. The pregnancy was easier than the first, and when their second son was born in the spring of 1885, the labor was shorter and less difficult. They named him Matthew, and he was as different from Sam as night from day. Where Sam was dark-haired and serious, Matthew was blond and laughed at everything. But both boys were healthy and happy, and watching them grow up together filled Delilah with a contentment she had never imagined possible. The years rolled by, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythms of ranch life. There were hard times. A winter when the snow was so deep they could not get to town for 2 months. A summer when drought killed half the garden. A terrifying week when Sam got sick with fever and they thought they might lose him. But there were far more good times. Birthdays and holidays, visits from friends, long summer evenings spent watching the boys play in the creek while Ben and Delilah sat on the porch, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. In 1888, when Sam was 5 and Matthew was 3, Delilah found herself pregnant again. This time, Dr. Reed told her with a smile she was carrying a girl. Delilah was overjoyed. She had loved her boys fiercely, but the thought of a daughter, someone she could teach to sew and cook, and all the things her mother had taught her, filled her with excitement. Sarah was born in November, arriving during the first snowstorm of winter. She had Ben's blue-green eyes and Delilah's dark hair, and from the moment she entered the world, she had both of her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. "She looks just like you," Ben said, holding Sarah while Delilah rested. Sam and Matthew crowded close, trying to get a look at their new sister. "Is she going to stay little forever?" Sam asked. "No, she will grow up just like you," Ben said. "And you are going to be her big brother, which means you have to help take care of her and protect her. Can you do that?" Sam nodded solemnly. I will protect her from bears and wolves and bad men. That is my boy, Ben said, pride clear in his voice. With 3 children, the cabin felt too small, so Ben built another addition, giving the boys a room of their own and creating a small parlor where Delilah could sew and the family could gather in the evenings. The ranch continued to grow, and they hired a young cowboy named Tom to help with the horses. Tom built himself a small cabin near the creek and became part of the family, eating dinner with them most nights and helping Delilah with the children when Ben was away on business. As the children grew older, Delilah began teaching them to read and write, using books she ordered from catalogs and whatever newspapers and magazines made their way to the ranch. Sam proved to be a quick learner, devouring everything she put in front of him. Matthew was more interested in the outdoors, in horses and roping and all the physical skills of ranching. And Sarah, when she was old enough, showed an interest in sewing, sitting beside Delilah for hours and learning to make neat, tiny stitches. In 1892, nearly 10 years after they had been married, Ben and Delilah took a trip to Silver City, leaving the children with Tom for a few days. It was the first time they had been alone together since Sarah's birth, and it felt like a second honeymoon. They stayed at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, which brought back a flood of memories. Mrs. Chen was older now, her hair completely gray, but she still ran the house with the same efficiency and kindness. "Look at you two," she said when she saw them. "So happy, so successful. I am proud of what you have built." "We could not have done it without you," Delilah said, hugging the older woman. "You gave me a place to stay when I had nothing. You helped me find work. You believed in me." "You believed in yourself," Mrs. Chen corrected. "I just gave you a little push." They visited Catherine at the dress shop, which had expanded and now employed 5 seamstresses. Catherine hugged Delilah and demanded to see pictures of the children, exclaiming over how much they had grown. "You ever miss it?" Catherine asked. "The sewing, the shop, that life?" Delilah thought about it. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I loved the work, but I love my life now more. The ranch, the children, Ben. It is what I was meant to have." That night, as they lay together in the room at the boarding house, Ben said, "Do you ever think about Santa Fe anymore?" It had been years since they had talked about Delilah's past. Ben never brought it up, and Delilah had mostly stopped thinking about it, but the question did not upset her the way it might have once. "Sometimes," she said, "but it feels so distant now, like it happened to someone else." "I am not that frightened girl anymore, Ben. That person died in Pinos Altos. You helped me become someone new." "You helped yourself," Ben said. "I just gave you the opportunity. You did the hard work of healing, of building a new life. You should be proud of that." "I am," Delilah said. "I am proud of everything we have built together. Our ranch, our children, our life. It is more than I ever dreamed I could have." Ben pulled her close, and they made love slowly, tenderly, with the passion of long familiarity and deep love. Afterward, as Delilah drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about the girl she had been, sitting on the steps of that saloon with a gun in her lap, ready to die. That girl would never have believed that this future was possible, that she could be this happy, this loved, this fulfilled. But it was possible. She was living proof of it. Sometimes all it took was one person willing to stop and offer help. One person willing to see past the fear and despair to the strength underneath. One person willing to take a chance on love. The years continued to pass, bringing the usual mix of joy and sorrow. Mrs. Chen died in 1895, and Delilah mourned her deeply, traveling to Silver City for the funeral and grieving the loss of the woman who had been like a mother to her. But there were happy times too. Sam's graduation from the small school they had finally built in the valley, Matthew's first successful horse sale, Sarah's beautiful embroidery that earned her ribbons at the county fair. In 1897, when Sam was 14, he found a wanted poster in town and brought it home. It was old, yellowed with age, and offered a reward for information about a woman who had killed a man in Santa Fe back in 1882. The description was vague enough that it could have been almost anyone, and the reward was only $50. Clearly, after 15 years, no one was looking very hard anymore. Sam showed the poster to his parents, curious. "Did you know about this, Ma?" "Sounds like it happened around the time you came to New Mexico." Delilah looked at the poster, feeling an old fear flicker in her chest, but it was just a flicker, nothing more. She looked at Ben and he gave her a slight nod. "I knew about it," Delilah said carefully. "I was there in Santa Fe when it happened. The woman they are looking for, the one who killed that man, that was me." Sam's eyes went wide. "You? But why?" "Because he attacked me and I defended myself. And then I ran because I did not think anyone would believe me." Delilah took her son's hands. "Sam, I was a different person then. I was alone and scared and desperate. But then I met your father and he helped me see that I could have a different life. A better life. Everything we have, this ranch, this family, it all came from that second chance." Sam looked at the poster, then at his mother, then at his father. "Are they still looking for you?" "I doubt it," Ben said. "It has been 15 years. $50 is not much of a reward, and even if someone did figure out it was your mother, she acted in self-defense. Any jury would see that." "I still think you are the bravest person I know," Sam said, hugging his mother. "You survived something terrible and you built something good. That is pretty amazing, Ma." Delilah held her son, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Sam. That means more to me than you know." They burned the wanted poster in the fireplace that night, watching it curl and blacken and turn to ash. It felt like closing the last chapter of an old story, one that no longer had any power over them. As the new century approached, Delilah found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed. She was 40 years old now, a wife and mother, a rancher's partner, a woman who was respected in her community. The Porters were known throughout the territory for their fine horses and their generous hospitality. They had built something real and lasting, something that would continue long after they were gone. Sam, now 16, was talking about going to college back east, perhaps studying veterinary medicine so he could come back and help expand the ranch. Matthew, 14, was already as good with horses as his father, with an instinctive understanding of animal behavior that made him invaluable. And Sarah, at 11, was growing into a beautiful, talented young woman with her mother's skills with a needle and her father's kind heart. On Christmas Eve of 1899, the family gathered around the table for dinner. Ben had shot a turkey, and Delilah had cooked it with all the trimmings. The cabin smelled of pine and cinnamon and wood smoke, and candles flickered on every surface. After dinner, they sang carols, Ben's rich voice blending with Delilah's softer one, the children joining in with enthusiasm if not always perfect pitch. As the children went off to bed, still excited about the presents that would appear under the tree in the morning, Ben and Delilah sat by the fire, holding hands and watching the flames dance. "You ever think about what your life would have been like if I had ridden past Pinos Altos that day?" Ben asked softly. "Sometimes," Delilah admitted, "but I do not dwell on it. I prefer to think about what did happen, not what might have been." "What did happen was pretty amazing," Ben said. "I found a woman waiting to die and I gave her a reason to live. And in return, she gave me everything I ever wanted. A home, a family, a purpose. I got the better end of that deal." "We both got what we needed," Delilah said. "You needed someone to build your dream with. I needed someone to show me that dreams were still possible. We saved each other, Ben." That is the truth of it." Ben lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it, just as he had done 17 years earlier in Silver City. "I love you, Delilah Porter. I have loved you from the moment I saw you, and I will love you until the day I die." "I love you too," Delilah said. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for seeing past my fear and desperation to the person I could become. Thank you for giving me this life." They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the fire crackle and the wind whisper outside. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and another answered. The sounds of the wild country they had made their home. Delilah thought about the ghost town where she had been ready to end her life, about the cowboy who had ridden out of the sunset and offered her water and hope. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, to this warm cabin, this good man, these wonderful children. She thought about all the years stretching ahead, years filled with work and love and the simple satisfaction of a life well lived. She had been found in a ghost town, waiting to die. But Ben Porter had given her a reason to live. And in living, she had found everything she had ever wanted, everything she had never dared to dream of. She had found love, purpose, family, and home. She had found herself. And that, Delilah knew, was the greatest gift of all. The new century dawned bright and clear, bringing with it a sense of hope and possibility. The ranch continued to thrive, and the Porter children grew into capable, kind young adults who made their parents proud every day. Sam went off to college as planned, writing long letters home about his studies and his adventures. Matthew took over more and more of the ranch work, eventually building his own cabin on the property when he married a local girl named Emma. And Sarah, after finishing her education, opened a small dressmaking business in the front room of the cabin, fulfilling her mother's old dream in her own way. Ben and Delilah grew old together, their love deepening with every passing year. They sat on their porch in the evenings, watching grandchildren play in the yard where their children had once played, and they counted their blessings. They had built something good, something that would last long after they were gone. They had taken the broken pieces of their lives and forged them into something beautiful. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the stars were bright and the desert wind whispered through the cottonwoods, Delilah would think about Pinos Altos. She would remember the dust devils dancing in the empty street, the weight of the gun in her lap, the despair that had nearly consumed her. And then she would look at Ben, at his weathered face and gentle eyes, and she would reach for his hand. He always took it, his grip still strong, still sure. And they would sit together in the darkness, two people who had found each other when they needed it most, who had chosen love over despair, hope over surrender, life over death. They had built a legacy, not of wealth or fame, but of love and family and the quiet courage it took to keep going when everything seemed lost. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.